Good evening and welcome to another edition of Jungle Juice. It's Sam Gormley and Mick Nelson with you. Mick, it's a victory Wednesday. It's with Monday Night Football, and it's been kind of a weird week for me work-wise anyways, but it has to make me think, like, is today Wednesday? Because, like, you sent me a text message earlier today about the podcast, and I was like, oh, it is Wednesday. My weeks have all been thrown off, but happy Victory Wednesday to you.
Happy Victory Wednesday to you as well. Yeah, the week is it's been a weird week. It's just kind of flown by at this point with the Monday Night Football game, and now it's Wednesday already. You're kind of a day short on the game prep or whatever, but I don't know. We're here. We're ready to rock and roll. Just want to throw out a quick disclaimer here. My wife is currently not home. That means my two animals are outside right now or out in the living room with me. So if you do hear any other voices or, see anybody that's not me, that is them. So we'll try to control that as much as I can.
I mean, I would assume that if a random animal popped into the screen, that they would assume it wasn't you. That's probably a safe assumption for that. But if you hear some dogs or something in the background, maybe Rory and Cooper want to give their thoughts on the game. Maybe I'm sure they watched. So
I don't know. I bet Cooper's a Steelers fan. I'm not going to lie. He's a real He's a real dejected dog.
We need to get Rory's thoughts on how Cordell Volson. What do we think about that? But that we can.
She watched the game on Monday, so she probably does have some thoughts about it.
She probably has better thoughts than we do, if we're being honest. As coming up on the show today, we will recap that win against the Los Angeles Rams on Monday night. We'll kind of go through the good, the bad, and the ugly. We will talk backup quarterback again, as there is a new backup quarterback in the room. Will Grier gone after Bill Belichick kind of pulled a fast one on him. And in comes A.J. McCarron. I know when I read it, I was kind of like, wait, what? And we'll talk about that, and then we'll get you ready for Bengals-Titans. That'll happen on Sunday afternoon, a 1 o'clock Eastern kick down in good old Nashville, Tennessee. But first, we got to talk about good old Victory Wednesday here on the show, as the Bengals picked up their first win of the season on Monday night against the Los Angeles Rams, the whiteout game, Ring of Honor. I think Ring of Honor is where we should start, Mick, before we get into the good, the bad, and the ugly. Chad Johnson and Boomer Esiason were both recognized during halftime. They were the rulers of the jungle. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was a great time. It's just, we touched on this last week, but, we didn't see Boomer play, but we obviously know all the great things that he did for the franchise and how he's continued to endorse the brand, going into his broadcasting career and other things. But we did watch Chad Johnson play, and I think a lot of people our age would say he was probably our favorite player growing up. And to see him get the recognition he deserves by the franchise, it was just a great moment for us to see. It was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, you can't talk that mid-2000s Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, Chad Johnson is at the focal point of that. And not only going with that, the biggest thing with probably both of them is you probably won't find two better ambassadors for the Cincinnati Bengals continuing after their playing career than both Boomer Esiason and Chad Johnson. And I know it meant a lot for me to actually see them get their moments while they still can, and they can still enjoy it. You could tell just looking. I know I listened to Chad. He was on with Shannon Sharp on his podcast. I think it was after the game. And I don't know if you saw this, Mick, but they asked him, Shannon asked him pretty much like, what does it mean? And Chad said, how much it meant to him. And then Shannon followed up with, your mom and your grandma who kind of helped raise you weren't there. Were they going through your mind? And he had mentioned that he specifically didn't think about that because he knew he would have gotten emotional. Then he ended up getting emotional on the podcast, saying that his first thing he was going to do with the jacket is go to their graves. And it just kind of shows you on how much it meant to a guy like Chad. And Boomer had his entire family there. Chad his entire family there. It was a really cool ceremony at halftime. Good on the Bengals for doing it.
Yeah, and good on the season ticket holders for voting him in and putting them in. I don't think you could have found two better candidates to put in this year. So it was just great to see.
Yeah, without question. I'm glad that it actually happened, and I'm glad that we could be there as well. The White Tiger night as well. As I mentioned last week, I did not get to experience White Tiger last year, And I'm super excited that I got to this year. It was a great atmosphere. It was a lot of fun. For the most part, I think probably 90% of fans participated and wore the white, and it looked really good because of it.
Yeah, no, it's a good coordination by everybody there. It was killer environment, packed house. It was very loud. I think we definitely helped the defense and having an A-plus performance on Monday. So yeah, it was just it's great that we're going to get to witness this every year from going on out.
Yeah, it definitely needs to become something that is a tradition. It was a great idea when they came up with it last year, and I hope it can continue in the years to come. So let's dive into the recap of that win against the Rams on Monday. As we usually like to separate it, it's kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly from the game. And if you have something from the good, the bad, and the ugly, make sure you let us know in the comments section. We'd like to hear some of your thoughts as well, because you might disagree. You might think something was bad and we thought it was good, or you might think something was good and we thought it was bad with it. That's kind of the best part about being fans. So make sure you let us know there, as we are streaming live on the Jungle Juice podcast Facebook and YouTube channels. Make sure you follow us there, and also on our good friend Josh Isles, WDN Today, his page. Make sure you follow that on Facebook as well. We're on Spotify. We're on all of your podcast platforms as well. So make sure you subscribe to us there and don't miss any of the action. Should have done that a little bit earlier, Mick, but better late than never. The good from the game on Monday. Do you want to hit us up for your first good thing from Monday?
Yeah, first good thing. Let's start with the man under center, or in this case, the man in the shotgun. Joe Burrow came out and played the whole game. There's speculation the whole week about his calf and whether, that was going to hold up enough for him to play. He ended up playing. He playing the whole game, and he got the win. Was it the best Joe Burrow performance I've ever seen? No, but it was, the quarterback rating thing. I'm not, I think it's a little misleading. I thought he had a couple of decent throws, moved the ball when they needed to, got enough points to win the game. And they also kind of left some points on the scoreboard as well. I think there's a couple drives where they probably could have gotten at least a field goal. So, they definitely could have won by 2 possessions there. And they were up 2 possessions going into that final drive by the Rams too.
Another good for me, and I think it's one of the more obvious ones as well, is pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it on this show last week, how we had mentioned that, in the Browns game, we came away thinking, wow, like this pass rush, I'm a fan. And in the Ravens game, we kind of said, pass rush, like, where'd it go? Like, what happened? It was good last week. What happened? And then it kind of went back to the Browns game. I mean, they were fantastic on Monday evening against a Rams team that does not have a great offensive line. And when a team does not have a great offensive line, we've seen this on the other side of it for years now. Good defensive lines feast. And that's exactly what Trey Hendrickson and company did.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a key to victory that I was mentioning last week, is that the Rams probably have a bottom 5 offensive line in the league. And if the defense wants to make their mark and keep the team in the game and win it ultimately, that pass rush is going to have to be a factor. And those guys definitely held their end of the bargain there. Trey Hendrickson had a great game on the edge spot. He had 2 sacks and plenty more pressures. I don't know how many exactly he had in the pressures category, but that guy was pretty much in the backfield almost the entire game. And they ended up getting 6, 7 sacks.
6 sacks. It was tied for the most in the Zach Taylor era.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, tied for the most. I wonder what the other game was. I'm surprised.
If we were good at our jobs, we would have had that. But I remember reading it. But still, 6 sacks regardless. It's an unbelievable tally. And that was a huge difference in the game, because it seemed like, there was a period until the very last drive, Matthew Stafford hadn't completed a pass in the red zone. He was like 0 for his first 7 in the red zone. And a large reason behind that was because the pass rush was so good.
Yeah. That's 100% true. The red zone defense is probably the best red zone, definitely the best I've seen this season. And last year they were pretty good at trying to implement the bend but don't break defense. And yeah, they just looked great in the red zone. They looked great across the board. I mean, it didn't seem like the Rams could move the ball at all in the second half until that last drive. And I know you were a little on edge after the first drive because they kind of marched down the field there. So, but
yeah, and I mean, I think everyone kind of was, because one of the biggest, I mean, it kind of looked like things were going the previous 2 weeks, and I think everyone was kind of like, ooh, this is not great. And then you had the big sack by DJ Rader. And from that point on, the defense was unbelievable for the rest of the game. I think another one of the good, and Steve writes it in. I mean, honestly, Steve's right. Jonah Williams deserves to be in the category of good. He had a great game on Monday, and really 4 of the offensive linemen had a great game. We're going to take one of them and maybe mention him in one of the other categories a little bit later on. But yeah, I think Jonah had a great game. Another one of the goods for me, Logan Wilson in that defense. I mean, listen, anytime you have 2 interceptions, he's now at 9 interceptions.
He lead all linebackers right now.
He's got to be. I mean, and he was great, and he just continuously finds a way to. I mean, he made a great play as the second interception was deflected by Mike Hilton. He made a great job, going underneath of it and getting it. I mean, listen, Logan Wilson deserves to be classified in the good. He just keeps on playing.
Yeah, he had a great game, especially in coverage on Monday. Those 2 interceptions proved to be pretty crucial. I think one of them ended up in a scoring drive afterwards, if I remember correctly. The other one, that was the first half offense right there, right afterwards. So we won't get too far into that yet. But yeah, Logan looks Logan looked great in the coverage, or in coverage, and definitely a remarkable improvement from the first 2 weeks of the season, I think.
To me, another one of the goods is a position group as a whole, and it was one that I didn't necessarily think would be on the good going into the game, is tight ends. I mean, listen, I mean, considering that you were missing your starting tight end, and again, we're not getting into the Irv Smith conversation. We can have that, another day. But you're looking at, you really didn't have a starting tight end, because that is a weakness for this team, is that they don't really have much depth at that position. So they call up Tanner Hudson. Had a great game. I mean, he fell down on that opening drive. But other than that, he did what you would expect from a practice squad call-up tight end. Drew Sample had the highest blocking grade on the team, and made actually a nice catch and run and came up just short of the first down on that play. And then, heck, Mitchell Wilcox came away with arguably the best play of the game, the biggest play of the game, and he recovered the onside kick. Yeah. I mean, listen, it's underrated, but it absolutely has to be mentioned. And I think the tight ends really impressed me, considering that they were missing their starter.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me think, like, I don't want to have too much Irv Smith slander, but my big problem I have with Irv Smith is that he doesn't have the same athletic build as previous starting tight ends have had. He's definitely shorter than Hurst and Uzama were, in the past couple of years. Definitely a little bit smaller. And this isn't to say Irv Smith isn't a very athletic guy, but it's definitely a different athletic profile at the tight end position. This game, you kind of went back to guys with those types of builds. And, Tanner Hudson had a couple of really nice catches. Obviously, Drew Sample had that catch. And I actually really liked what Zach Taylor did with the pass protection, going into the game, or, I think it was midway through the game, he decided to put Drew Sample in the backfield as
an H-back, pretty much.
Yeah, as the H-back. Yeah, and you kind of thought that's a role he was going to kind of take going into his career here in Cincinnati. And the fact that he, went in there and filled that Ryan Hewitt role admirably.
There's a mention I wasn't having on my bingo card today. I didn't think we were going to get a Ryan Hewitt mention.
No, I didn't think so either until I was rattling off sentence there. But yeah, no, I think Drew Sample had a really good game. I'm hoping they utilize him more in that capacity, because I don't see a reason for them not to. Definitely helps
Do you have another good, or do you want me to fire off another one?
Let's see. Not the secondary was it? I don't. They're in
How
the
about
mid
how about I get more?
category. Not.
How about I get more specific on the secondary and take that? And Dax Hill
Yeah,
made
I
some
think
decent
Dax Hill had
plays.
a decent game. Definitely had that crazy blitz
The sack, yeah.
sack. Yeah, I think it was in the second or the third quarter, if I remember correctly. Dude just torpedoed himself into the backfield and just laid out Matthew Stafford. So yeah, I think Dax Hill had a pretty decent game. Cheeto ended up playing pretty well. Yeah, I don't. That's probably about the best I can do for the secondary in the good category.
I'll follow it up with another one here in the good, and a guy that we could probably put in the good most weeks, but he was the reason the Bengals won the football game. Evan McPherson. He
shooter.
continues to be
He had
a
3 field goals from 50 yards plus.
yes, which is hilarious because I read the stat and I don't have it directly in front of me, but I want to say that that is 20 career field goals from 50 plus in his career. I think he's 20 of 24. The next highest in Bengals history is Mike Nugent, I think, with 8.
Wow.
And it's just wild to think about how, I mean, he is a weapon. And another thing with it is that, and I was kind of blown away by reading this stat. I think it was in Jay Morrison from Pro Football Network wrote the stat that Money Mac in his career has the 3rd highest percentage on field goals above 50 yards. And what was wild to me is that who is somebody you would think is on that list ahead of him?
So you said he's number 3?
Yes. So who would be one of the guys that you would possibly mention? Because there's one guy that would come to my name, but he's not on that list.
You probably were you thinking Justin Tucker?
Correct. Justin Tucker's career percentage above 50 yards is like 65%.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
See, I never would have guessed that. But still, and I think that just shows you that how big of a what. Now, Justin Tucker, obviously from inside 50 is automatic. But I think it just shows that having a guy like him it's an incredible weapon. And I mean, we can say this every single week. You look at the playoff runs and so on. Evan McPherson is a huge reason behind all of that.
So who are the other two? Let me guess one. I'm going to go with Janikowski just because he couldn't hit from close at all. He could boom it.
This list could have been active players. And while we're talking here, I will look it up here because I'm pretty sure it was Jay Morrison's article. But I want to say Chase McLaughlin was number 1.
Okay.
Who I would not have guessed on that list. And as I'm looking here, while we're talking here, I'll continue to pull it up and see if I can't find it.
Brett Maher or Dan Bailey. I'm going to go Brett Maher.
The other good for me in the game is, and we kind of touched on it at the open, the atmosphere. The atmosphere deserves a lot of credit.
And then also to go back to the special teams, Charlie Jones had a really good game returning.
That's punts. One I did not mention, and yes, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think Rapine was mentioning it on his podcast. Honestly, you might not be scoring field goals. Some of those Shooter McPherson field goals if it weren't for a decent punt return set up by Charlie Jones. It seemed like he is rattling off a good, probably 8 to 10, sometimes 15-yard punt returns. And yeah, I mean, if you're not doing that, you're taking a fair catch, which I know the number one job by a punt returner is to make sure you give the ball to the quarterback or give the ball to the offense. But if it weren't for Charlie Jones, I don't know if the Bengals would have been in field goal range for a couple of those drives. So, yeah, big kudos to Charlie Jones there.
So for one here, I can give you this too, stat. The 6 sacks were the most in a game since the 2019 season finale against the Browns, when they also had 6. What's also interesting is the Bengals won a game for the first time scoring less than 20 in the regular season in the Zach Taylor era. So here's Evan McPherson. So Evan McPherson has 16 field goals of 50-plus yards in just over 2 seasons, doubling the previous record by Doug Pelfrey and Mike Nugent of 8. He's 16 of 20 for his career on kicks of 50 plus. The 80% success rate is the fourth highest since 1991. Daniel Carlson, Chase McLaughlin, Chris Boswell. That's the top three. Justin Tucker is just under 70%. So, I mean, it just shows you that he is such a weapon for this team.
Yeah, no, he's critical. He's good for getting the points on the board when the offense obviously isn't moving as it could have. And if we probably wouldn't be talking about a victory Monday here if it weren't for Shooter. So yeah, he was fantastic.
Let's go on to the bad. Or did you have any other more of the good?
No.
The bad. So again, we separate the bad that is kind of our mid-tier. And then there is the ugly. So we'll get to the ugly here in just a few minutes. I know we've had a couple of comments on things that would be classified in the ugly. But for the bad, Mick, does anything come out to you?
I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I don't think the run blocking was spectacular by any means. I mean, they got the job done on when they needed to, but it didn't seem like they were running with the same effectiveness that they had the past couple of weeks, but they were running the ball a little more often, I guess. Or maybe they weren't. I don't know, because Joe had like 50 pass attempts, against 20. Go back to the good category just real quick. Time of possession wasn't a good category, where the Bengals were kind of lacking that, at least in week 1, and then week 2, I guess it was a little more 50-50 than that. But time of possession was a great thing. So for the bad, I didn't think the run game was like spectacular by any means. I didn't think it was bad, I guess, but it wasn't like great. It wasn't very good.
Well, that classifies into the bad category, because I was just going to just take a step back, and I was going to put the offense as a whole in bad in my eyes.
Yeah,
it wasn't good. It wasn't ugly. It was, now the Rams defense is not what it was in the Super Bowl year, but it's not like they're the worst defense in the league either.
Yeah, Steve mentions Higgins in the bad category. We'll get one step further here in a little bit, but definitely was at least bad on Monday.
In fact, how about we just transition into the ugly? Because
I
think Steve's exactly correct. And listen, we're gonna call it like we see it. T. Higgins had a bad game on Monday.
Yeah, it's no other way to put it. I want to say he had 3 drops, maybe 2.
They only classified him with 2, but he had 2 catches, I think, on 9 targets.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a couple of those that, I mean, he had some killer drops in the game.
Yeah. No, yeah. Killer drops, killed drives, forced punts, or a long field goal from Shooter, and Shooter had to bail him out. Yeah, T just seems a little off to start the year. Now, I know he had, I wouldn't say it was like a great game against the Ravens.
Had 2 touchdowns.
He had 2 touchdowns. He did, he's definitely the best receiver on the team in that game, but I wasn't like, last year team made those plays that really made you think like, wow, this guy is the best number 2 receiver in the league, right? So we just haven't seen that yet, and I just don't know what's going on. I think some of it's probably Joe. It just he hasn't been able to throw the ball downfield. His ball placement isn't there on those deep throws because of the whole calf injury. But yeah, it just seems like T's not really getting any separation, and he's not winning at the catch point like he usually does.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's something that will get better, hopefully, over these next couple of weeks, especially going up against the Titans team on Sunday. So I'm hopeful for the future of T. Higgins. But, and I mean, Steve writes in here and says, Boyd, the interception was 100% on Boyd, not like him at all. I do agree that the interception, Boyd deserves some of the fault for that.
That was also just a great play by Ahkello Witherspoon.
Yeah, and Ahkello Witherspoon, I think if we were doing a Rams podcast, I'd almost put him in the good. I think, heck, he was making plays all over the game, all over the field on Monday night. Luckily, this is not a Rams podcast, although we met a nice Rams fan that sat to our left on Monday, and I'm sure we would have had him on.
Oh
Oh
no.
man, look who it is. It's
Oh
David Miracle
no.
writing in. Oh my goodness.
Fellow
I,
admin of the Houday Nation group. We've tailgated with David a few times. Houday David.
yeah, it doesn't get much better than good old David, the pride of Pineville, Kentucky. Now, and we're getting off topic, Mick, but I don't know if you've ever been to Pineville. Probably haven't, but Pineville is famous for they have a massive rock that is above the city, and they have a chain on it because they have to be careful that they chain the rock to the mountain so that it doesn't fall down and crush the town. So they have chain rock. There's Eastern Kentucky for you to a T. And David will back me up. It is 100% true.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
and I
don't
agree.
doubt it.
I agree with Steve. Great play. That's a ball Boyd normally catches. I don't disagree with that at all. Yep, there it is. Chain rock.
Boyd's been kind of surprising. I thought that, he's had a few favorable matchups against slot cornerbacks the past 3 weeks, and it just doesn't seem like he just doesn't look like himself either. And again, how much of that is just Joe and his injury.
I like that they got him. I think he got caught like the first 2 or 3 passes of the game.
They got him going.
And I like
a
that
little
they
early.
tried to get him going earlier, and then Jamar is somebody we should have mentioned in the good too.
We completely forgot about Jamar. I put Jamar in he had a great performance on
second most catches in Bengals history. He was great.
Yeah. Now, I would, the only thing I want to see from Jamar going on is just you typically see him breaking more tackles, and you typically see him with being that yak specialist, and you haven't seen that thus far this year. Hopefully he can kind of break out of that. But yeah, I think Jamar had a great game on Monday. Obviously was the X factor on the offense, and they needed to utilize him in that capacity as well. They hadn't really done that the first 2 weeks. So good job by Zach for scheming plays for Jamar, and good on Jamar for helping the offense move the ball.
Another ugly, and Steve mentioned it earlier, is Cordell Volson. And
yep.
And kind of the question I want to ask you, Mick, is with this is that a problem, or is that the fact that he went up against arguably the best interior defensive lineman? Well, in fact, we can say there's no argument. He's the best interior defensive lineman of this era. And an argument could be made that he's the best interior defensive lineman ever. How much of that goes on that, and how much of that is a legitimate worry that Cordell Volson is a problem?
Now, I think you'll see Cordell improve throughout the season. He's had a tough 3 matchups, really, with the interior offensive line. You got Myles Garrett, even though he's an edge, he's kind of just lining up everywhere and then just wreaks havoc so much that other guys just end up busting through as well. So you just have the whole Cleveland front 4, which Cleveland looks like potentially the best defense in the league so far this season. So you had kind of had a tough matchup with that. You had a tough matchup against Baltimore with Justin Madubuike and Broderick Washington. Those guys are a pretty solid interior duo. And then obviously Monday night against the great Aaron Donald.
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but
it's not going to get any easier this week.
Simmons for the Titans, it doesn't get any easier. And you better believe when all of these teams that have these great interior defensive linemen, they're looking at this line, they're saying, okay, you've got Orlando Brown Jr., who has played pretty well as a left tackle. You've got a good center in Ted Karras. You've got a right guard in Alex Kappa, who's pretty solid. Jonah Williams coming off his best game. There is a clear weakness on the offensive line so far this year, and that is Cordell Volson. And you better believe that these defensive coordinators, I don't know who the defensive coordinator for the Titans is off the top of my head, but Mike Vrabel is a defensive head coach. You better believe that he has had that circled, and you're going to see a lot of Simmons versus Volson, and that is something that concerns me. But then I don't know that there is a better option on the team right now.
No, I don't know if there is either. I mean, yeah, you could throw Cody Ford out there, but is he really going to do any better?
Max Sharping?
Maybe Sharping. But yeah, I don't think anybody is going to be holding up against is going to hold up that great against Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald's just a freak athlete, and probably the best interior defensive lineman ever. So, it was a bad game. It was an ugly game for Cordell. The PFF grading kind of reflected in that. Um, and
With a
he's had
0, correct?
he's grading out in the mid-20s for the year so far, which is just astronomically low. It's really bad. Uh,
Not even
so
Bobby Hart was that bad.
no, he wasn't. He wasn't that bad. So I think after week 4, it might get a little bit better for Cordell, but if you're calling for a benching, I mean, I don't know.
I'm not calling for a benching just because I don't
Mhm.
think what you have anything better.
No, I don't think you do either. You know, I think the other two are probably similar to the same skill level as Cordell Volson, but yeah, there's no sense in changing that out and messing with the continuity of the offensive line.
Another big ugly for me from Monday's game, and it was something that even Joe Burrow mentioned in his press conference again today, is penalties, especially penalties like false starts.
I don't know how you have these types of penalties at home.
Yeah.
Now, how much does it have to do with though that Joe Burrow is not practicing
That's not an
much?
excuse.
I mean, yeah, but I mean that does kind of you can't say it can't hamper the communication of the offense a little bit, even a little bit. Um, so I wonder
Yeah,
how much of that is that, but it's kind of I agree. Those types of penalties are kind of inexcusable, especially when you're playing at home. So
yeah, and I think that is a problem because really, listen, you can say anything you want about Zach Taylor as a head coach. Say what you want. He's heard it. Everybody's heard it, and so on. But the one thing that you have to give him props for is his teams are very, they've always been one of the least penalized teams in the NFL. He does
yeah,
a really good job at that. That's 100%.
yeah, he's usually really good at having a very disciplined team, and
And
that's always played to his advantage in games, or it's the team's advantage in games. Definitely agree, Dave. False starts need to stop. They really got it. They really got to
it's
crank
especially
down
when you
on
have
that.
2 straight games coming on the road. Now, the Titans, it's going to be a good atmosphere. They're obviously fired up. The Bengals have won that. I'm sure that there'll be a lot of Bengals fans in
Mm-hmm.
the stands in Nashville with it being a short trip. And then Arizona's probably not going to be your Kansas City like atmosphere, but
No,
you're still on the road in the NFL. It's going to be loud, especially because the Cardinals, surprisingly, are playing pretty well, like all things considered.
yeah, we kind of went into the season thinking, oh well, these guys should be an easy win, and they're not going to be. They've looked pretty good to start the year. So yeah, you're gonna have 2 road games in a row, and that's just something you got to clean up. That's stuff that's the stuff that kills that kills winning games for teams. So
Let's do you have any other recaps there from the Rams game? Because I think the biggest thing with the Rams game is the most important thing that happened is there's 2. Joe Burrow did not have any setbacks, and the Bengals won the football game.
no, this is
And honestly, at the end of the game, anything could have happened, and if those 2 things happened, I was going to be pleased. And both things happened, and I was pleased.
same here.
One of the big storylines from last week that kind of came out of nowhere is I was doing some work on Saturday afternoon, and I log on to Twitter after X or whatever the heck it's called, after a couple of days, after a couple of hours not checking it, and I see that Jay Morrison tweets or posts or whatever we're calling it, says, AJ McCarron is in the building. And I thought him saying, I was like, okay, Jay's got jokes. Jay's got jokes. No, AJ McCarron was in the building. And then a couple of hours later, it comes out, AJ McCarron is on the practice squad now. Mick, did this kind of come out of left field, or was this just me?
So I kind of thought it did at first, but I mean, heck, we were kind of even mentioning like people were talking about potential backup quarterbacks, joining the team or whatever. And I think AJ was mentioned in the summer, after his, after the XFL season he had. So, at first I did kind of think it was out of left field, but looking back on it, not necessarily. I mean, the one thing that kind of makes it out of left field is that although he was a former Bengal, he doesn't have any rapport with much rapport with the coaching staff that they currently have, or really anybody on the team in general. Maybe he played with Joe Mixon in 2017. Was he on the team in 2017? Maybe.
No, I'm not even sure, to be honest.
Oh well, I'll put in the Google machine here. Let's see.
But still, so he maybe has had with one person on the team, so he doesn't really know any of these guys. And what was wild
on the team in 2017.
Okay. What was wild is that Paul Naynor Jr. on his podcast, Hear That Podcast Grailing on The Athletic, on Thursday or Friday or something last week on his show, had A.J. McCarron on to ask him about being a backup quarterback in the NFL. And it was funny that this was before any of this, and Paul asked him something along the lines of, would you ever like to come back to Cincinnati? And he was pretty much like, oh, yeah, my family loves Cincinnati, like 100%. And then next thing you know, he's coming back for real. And it was just kind of funny because when he had said in the XFL interview that the reason why he joined the XFL was so that his sons could see him play football, I thought that was his way of saying, I'm sticking with the XFL from here on out. Whereas it was pretty much him saying, I just want to give 1 year to give my kids this chance. And now that he's got the opportunity to come back in the NFL, he's going to take it.
Yeah, I mean, he might see both, honestly. He hasn't signed onto the roster yet. He's going to be on in a backup capacity more than likely if he does sign to the active roster. And, he could be one of those players that's kind of just like shuffling in between leagues, I guess. And, but yeah, I think it's a pretty good signing, though. I'm fairly happy with it. I think that he's probably better than the other two backup quarterbacks on the roster. He's had a track record of success with the franchise. Almost delivered us a playoff victory in 2015. I was pleasantly surprised by the signing.
Yeah, and I think it's a great move. He's a veteran quarterback, and I'm sure a veteran quarterback for Joe Burrow to lean on is going to be great too.
Yeah,
just somebody that he can talk to that has played a lot of games, that knows what it is. And yeah, I agree with Steve. He's better than any quarterback we have not named Burrow. I mean, here's the biggest thing too, is the thing about McCarron that the other two quarterbacks don't have. He's thrown a pass in the NFL.
Yeah, he has.
I mean, Jake Browning has had, 5 snaps?
Maybe.
In that Browns game? I don't even know how many snaps he ended up having out. That is the biggest thing with A.J. McCarron that excites me, is that if something happens, you have somebody that you can trust, even if his role is to back up Jake Browning. Is it somebody that has been a backup, knows what to do, knows how to handle it and everything. And I think that's huge for the team long term. And hopefully we never see A.J. McCarron touch the field.
Yeah.
Unless he's throwing a kneel down after the Bengals are up by 50 in a game. But I hope we never see him, but I'm glad that he's back.
Steve, we'll talk about this in the offseason, but not the biggest Jeremy Hill fan here. So
the 2015 playoff game. I'm more ready to talk about it now that the streak is over, but I'm not sure I'm necessarily ready to talk about it.
I think it's going to be an off-season issue whenever we're kind of running out of things to talk about. We can't
wait to have
the. We talked about this early on in the our podcast number 2. We got to have a group therapy session on that day. That was a depressing day. Back on topic though.
How about we move on to the Titans?
Let's do it.
Bengals travel down to Nashville as they will take on the Tennessee Titans. It'll be on Fox, which is a little interesting. Adam Amin will be the play-by-play guy. I haven't seen who it's Sean Smith is the official.
Oh, yeah, Sean Smith, and then the color analyst is Schlereth, I believe, Mark Schlereth.
Sure. I knew it was Adam Amin. That does sound right, though. The game is on Fox. It'll be a good old Nashville, Tennessee. I know a lot of Bengals fans are going to be making the trip down 71 to 65 to go down there. Megan's saying she's trying to convince her dad to make the trip with her. I have been to 2 games in that stadium. Once was the Bengals game in 2017. They lost. That was the game
that
Montez.
Music City Bowl, I'm guessing.
And then there was a Music City Bowl for Kentucky, and Kentucky lost. So I'm not sure I'm allowed back in the stadium. If my teams are 0-2, I live about 2 hours from Nashville, give or take. Well, I guess Nashville traffic might make it 2 hours and 15, 2 hours and 30 or so on. But I live close enough. I live on a way closer to Nashville than I do to Cincinnati. But I don't know that I am going to bring myself to go for that reason. Plus, well, I guess Megan and Steve both say I'm not allowed to go. So I guess since they chime in and say I'm not allowed, I guess I'm not allowed to go. I don't know. I think that this game as a whole is interesting. The Bengals have played really well against the Titans over the past couple of years, but all of the games have been extremely close. Burrow is 3-0 against the Titans, but I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think it will be too. I think it's going to, probably be close to the same script as the past two matchups, which have been primarily defensive games. Now I know the last one there's a few more points scored, but given the state of the offense right now and the state of Joe Burrow's health, I think you're going to see just an absolute defensive slugfest.
Here's the thing with the Tennessee Titans, and I know Burrow said it during the press conference today. I think Zach Taylor said it during his press conference, and it's something that I had mentioned or had written down to talk about anyways, is the Tennessee Titans are an AFC North team that plays in the AFC South.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Vrabel definitely, he definitely embodies that AFC North culture. Just to let you know, my wife is walking into our condo right now. So if you hear a door open or anything or dogs barking, that's her. But yeah, Mike Vrabel, Titans, they definitely embody that AFC North culture. Just tough, gritty defense. They love to run the ball. And yeah, it always just seems to be, a really good matchup every time they play the Bengals.
Let's talk Bengals offense up against the Titans defense. And I think that, the Bengals offense the past couple of weeks, we've seen some signs of life. The Titans defense, we touched on it a few minutes ago. Simmons in the middle is one of the best interior defensive linemen in the game. And if they can slow him down, I feel pretty decent about the chances against that defense.
Yeah. Now, we can't say that it's just Jeffrey Simmons, though. They do have a very good front five, I guess. They run a 3-4, so they got the two linebackers, two are pretty much edge rushers. So there's a few guys on the defensive interior that I'd be kind of concerned about other than Jeffrey Simmons. Teair Tart coming over from San Francisco. Now he's on the injury report right now with the knee injury, but he's a pretty solid interior guy. You got Danico Autry, who's been on that system for a few years, who's been fairly decent. Arden Key and Harold Landry. That's a pretty good front five to be dealing with. So I think that that you could see the offense kind of struggle against that. Especially given Joe Burrow's lack of mobility in the pocket.
I think you mentioned the injury report. That's probably where we should have started for the Titans. First off, we'll talk about the Bengals injury report. Joe Burrow, full participant in practice today, the calf injury. I think you're going to literally see him on the injury report for every game the rest of the season that says calf injury, and he'll have some sort of practice designation. Irv Smith did not practice with a hamstring injury, and Charlie Jones did not practice with a thumb injury. Those are the Bengals. For the Titans, Luke Gifford, who is a backup inside linebacker, did not practice because of a hamstring. Elijah Molden, backup safety, did not practice because of a hamstring. Peter Skowronski, who's their starting left guard, did not practice with an abdomen injury. And as you touched on it, Teair Tart did not practice. He's their starting nose tackle for the Titans. Titans did have a couple limited practices and so on. But for the most part, those are the four big injuries to keep an eye on. And if Tart doesn't play, that helps a lot for the Bengals. And even if Skowronski doesn't play.
Yeah. No, I think just to go back on the defense there, if Tart's out, that definitely bodes well for the Bengals, and dealing with that front five. But I pretty much if Tart is playing, though, I'm not really expecting much out of the offense this week. I think that they're very stout against the run. They also have a very good linebacker duo with this guy I've never heard of until this season, his name's Jack Gibbons, but right now he's ranked number 5 amongst linebackers in PFF, and is an 80+ grade against the run, I believe. It's coming in at a 79.3 grade against the run. And then you have another 49ers free agent signing in Azeez Al-Shaair, who's been also pretty decent. So I don't know. I'm not expecting too much out of the offense going into this week.
So I think when you have an offense that could struggle, your defense has to step up again. And for the Titans' offense against the Bengals' defense, have you ever heard of this guy named Derrick Henry, Mick?
Never heard of him.
Or DeAndre Hopkins? I love that the Titans on that note they're just going with all of these wide receivers, elite wide receivers that are on the back end of their prime. They had Julio Jones. I'm trying to think of who could be the next one that they grab in that realm. But here's the thing with the Titans offense.
They're going to trade for Devontae Adams, even though he doesn't look like he's past.
No, I was going to say Devontae Adams.
Mike Evans, maybe. Mike Evans is coming.
That would be a good one. That would be a good one. Steve asked too, Mick, and you can pull this up while we're talking. He has Squares, Wilson, and Pratt listed. If you have that PFF rankings,
I'll pull it up real quick.
And while you're searching for that, I'll talk a little bit about Derrick Henry against the Bengals. And I think for the most part in these past couple of years that Bengals have done a pretty good job against Derrick Henry, all things considered. He is an elite running back. He's incredibly good. And really, you think about it, he has really busted one big run against them. Now, that big run he busted was a big one in the playoff game. And I don't remember the exact yardage on it, but it was huge. But I think you shut him down, you win the game. Because Ryan Tannehill, to say he doesn't scare me is the biggest understatement in the world.
See, I don't want to put too much Tannehill slander on here. I mean, obviously, I
will.
Gave him the worst, we gave him his worst performance of his career, probably, or at least his most damning, with that playoff victory a couple of years ago. But I don't want to throw too much Tannehill slander in here. I think Tannehill is a fairly competent starting quarterback.
Ryan Tannehill is Andy Dalton.
I mean, I don't know. Tannehill did go to the AFC Championship game one year, so and has gotten his team a number 1 seed. So I don't know if I'll go that far, but yeah, I mean, I think stopping the run is probably would probably help in them winning the game. But I'm going to go in a different route as to what their key to success on the defense is, and that's again the pass rush. You're going to have a second week in a row where you were going up against, as Steve Hall mentioned, a very suspect offensive line. They're not very good up front, especially in a pass blocking capacity. Now their run blocking is remarkably better, but you do have some very suspect pass blockers. I think Trey Hendrickson's probably going to have a pretty favorable matchup against Andre Dillard, who just got off of an absolute beating from Myles Garrett last week. You have Dylan Radins and Aaron Brewer in the interior, who aren't necessarily good at pass blocking, but they're decent run blockers.
Skowronski did not practice today with an abdomen injury.
He's playing, yeah.
And so you probably aren't considering him either. And so I think that defensive line has to feast again.
Yes, yeah, I think that's probably their biggest key to victory is for the pass rush to come home again, and I don't see any reason why they won't. I would expect Lou to probably send blitzers again. It seemed like he was more willing to do that last week just because the Rams just weren't able to move the ball when he was sending pressure. And and then I think another key matchup is the secondary against the receiving core, which we talk about a unit that doesn't scare me. I know you said Tannehill, but I think this receiving core is lackluster.
I mean, if DeAndre Hopkins was DeAndre Hopkins from 4 years ago, it would be very different. But then your other one is Treylon Burks, who I know that Titans fans have a lot of hope for, But I feel like he's just been one of those guys that, and if my memory's right, I feel like he made a big catch against the Bengals last year.
Yeah, Treylon Burks had a pretty decent year last year. He has graded terribly so far this year. He has a knee injury, as you brushed on earlier in the podcast. So I wonder if that's hampering him a little bit. And then really their second. So Treylon Burks has pretty much been a non-factor this year so far. That kind of leaves just DeAndre Hopkins out on his own island with, some Chig Okonkwo and Nick Westbrook Akine's plays, splashed in there at some point. So they don't have a very robust receiving core by any means. The secondary hasn't been great for the Bengals this year, but it might be one of those get right games, I would think. But yeah, I think the defense should be able to hold their own just fine against Tennessee this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be an AFC North game, lower scoring, and so on. Evan McPherson will probably be another big weapon in the game because I don't think Fat Randy is still there anymore, is he, Mick? I think they have a new kicker.
Who do they have? Somebody.
I was going to say I meant to look this up, but I think Fat Randy is officially gone, which makes me a little bit sad because we were both big Fat Randy fans.
Yeah, I know. I totally think that he hurt his hamstring or his groin on that one.
His calf
against the Chargers.
It was his calf.
Oh,
that was the first calf gate we had.
That is probably the quickest recovery I've ever seen from a calf injury. Then
both of them. Remember, he strained both of them on one play, and Joe Burrow's reaction was kind of like, "Oh, this is the NFL." Nick Folk is their kicker.
Oh, well, and
he's pretty decent.
No, that's solid. He's like a modern day Shane Graham, right? Where he's like pretty automatic from like 45 with inside 45, and then it gets really suspect outside.
As long as you're not playing the Jets in the playoffs.
Yeah.
As long as you're not playing the Jets in the playoffs, Slim. Too soon?
Well, are you talking about the 2009 playoff game?
Yes.
Yeah, that was rough.
Not great. Do you have any other thoughts on the Titans before we jump into our picks?
No, I mean, pretty much just to summarize, this is going to be a defensive slugfest. There's not going to be a lot of points scored. It's going to be a lot like the previous two matchups, but maybe ramped up a little bit on the defense. Obviously Joe Burrow is not himself right now, given his injury. It's going to be a very tough and gritty game that.
In fact, I wanted to look here, and this is an interesting one here. So we're both in Kentucky, and tomorrow we're actually allowed to start betting on our phones. So Mick, I'll ask you the over under for the game. Do you know what it is?
No,
do you want to guess it? Do you want to guess it? I want to see if you can pull it out.
No, I'll go 30, 33 and a half.
Oh wow! So I already know what you're going to be guessing. You're going to be betting on this. The over under is 40 and a half.
Oh, hammer the under.
Hammer the under, which means over wins easily.
Financial advice.
Is an accountant allowed to give that?
No, but you did.
Oh, did you find those PFF linebacker grades?
Yeah. So the PFF linebacker grades before we get into our picks. Logan and Jermaine are in the middle of the pack right now. Jermaine is ranked 40th out of 77 linebackers. Logan Wilson's ranked 54th out of 77 linebackers. So Logan Wilson's probably been in the bottom third of the linebackers that have qualified. And then you got Jermaine in the middle of the road. Jermaine's been pretty decent against the run, but his coverage hasn't been what it usually is. Last year, he was an elite coverage linebacker for the entire season. And then Logan, it's the opposite. His coverage grade has been fairly decent this year at a 72.4, but his run defense has been pretty horrendous. And I think you can kind of notice that on the tape when you look at it. He missed a lot of tackles in those first 2 weeks.
So Tommy writes in and says he's taking the over at 40 and a half. Megan says she can talk football all day, but when we talk sports gambling, I feel so dumb. So Megan, that one is really simple for over under. Is 40 and a half means total points scored in the game. So it's pretty much if you think there will be 41 points or more, you take the over. And if you take the under, it means that you think that there will be 40 total points scored or less. That one's pretty easy to understand. Now, I will admit that I am a novice when it comes into a lot of the things in sports gambling, but that one's pretty easy to understand once you get it.
Yeah. And there we go. The light bulb.
So Tommy says that he's taking the over. Mick, you're taking the under.
I'd be hammering that under a million times out of a million. I don't see any way we're going to see 40 points scored in this game.
I think, honestly, they nailed it. Like, I think that one's right on the money about.
I don't think it's even close.
Okay. So if you're saying it's not so close, Mr. McNelson, what is the final score of Bengals Titans on Sunday afternoon?
Bengals 13, Titans 10.
13-10. My goodness.
It's going to be a very close game, and I just don't see a lot of points being scored given the state of the Bengals offense right now and the state of and the Titans defense is pretty decent. It's probably a top 10 unit when healthy. So 13-10, Bengals win.
I will end up going with the under on that as well. I'm going to say Bengals 20, Titans 16. I think we're going to get a bunch of field goals in this game, and I think that the Bengals end up pulling away. And you know what? Just because I want to have some fun, that'll be a late touchdown drive. That will do it. Joe Burrow, the offense clicks. Like, I think the first time that we're like, okay, the Bengals are officially back is going to be a touchdown drive late in that game where Burrow starts cooking. T. Higgins pulls in a touchdown in the 2-minute warning window, something like that. And then Fat Randy runs on the field, kicks Nick Folk in the groin, and ends up missing a game-winning field goal for that. Tommy writes in and says 24-17 Bengals.
So you're going over, but you're going barely over.
No, I said 20-16. Oh, you're taking Tommy.
No, Tommy. Okay. Tommy is. Frank is thinking along the same lines as me here. I totally agree, Frank. I'm going to go 13-10. I don't know if we see the Bengals score 2 touchdowns in the game, given just how good the Titans defense is. But
maybe Frank's thinking maybe a safety in there, or some fun. Maybe he's thinking a little wild. You never know, right?
2 safeties, a touchdown, 2 safeties, and a field goal. That's what Frank's going with.
A touchdown, 2-point conversion, 2 field goals. You can maybe get a little wild with it all. Touchdown, 2-point conversion, and 2 field goals. Get you to 14 that way.
I was trying to do the math there real quick, but yeah, that's right. That's right.
Maybe you never really know. Tommy does say, "Yep, barely over." I do think 40.5 is a good number as far as the over under on that.
Vegas has been pretty on top with the over unders. I feel like, and the spreads pretty early on in the season. Usually don't see them being that successful with it.
Here, I'm looking here to see whatever Evan McPherson's kicking is here. Field goals made. Let's see what it is for Evan McPherson. And of course I back out of it. Because pretty much whatever it is, I think you hammer the over in that.
I'm going to go 1.5.
I'm assuming that that's what it is, and I think you easily hit the over on it. Because I think he is absolutely, and of course I can't find it right now. I had it, and then I lost it.
Well, while you're looking for that, I'm going to give one shout out real quick for a birthday. It is our logo creator. Her name is Erin Jones. She turns 27 today. Obviously created that beautiful logo we have in the top right, and very, very skilled graphic designer and an even better friend. So happy birthday, Erin.
Happy birthday to you, Erin. And it is 1.5 for that.
1.5. Okay. Yeah. Hammer
the over. Hammer the over. In fact, I might even tomorrow, when we're actually legally allowed to bet that, I am probably going to go over on that because that seems like it is given. And I might even go a parlay with Nick Folk over as well, because I think his is 1.5 as well. I think that one feels pretty good to go over for it. Now, I guess if I'm picking 20-16, then I'm picking a couple of that. But yeah, happy birthday to Erin, and thank you for the logo. You did a really good job on it. It looks really good. Steve's going 24-13 Bengals. I'm assuming that's who he's picking. I don't think Steve would pick against the Bengals, knowing the little I've gotten to know about him over these past couple of weeks. and Tommy's with me and taking the over for Money Mac for it.
Yeah.
Remember to follow us on our social media channels. We are on Facebook. We are on YouTube. We have the Jungle Juice Facebook and YouTube channel. We also have our good friend Josh Isles over at WDN Today on Facebook. Make sure you follow him there. He does great work. You can always listen back to the podcast on our Spotify channel. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on iHeart. We're on that one French podcasting platform, Mick, which sadly we haven't gotten any French listeners over the past couple of weeks. So I guess us giving them the shout out has taken them away.
We got to start buying some ad space in the French media channels or whatever. We got to start increasing our presence over there, I think.
Yeah, it's clearly what we're doing right now is failing epically. So make sure you follow us on all of those channels. Wherever you get your podcast from, we should have it. And if there's a spot you get your podcast from that we aren't on, make sure to let us know because we will absolutely follow that out. Tommy, I don't know why I'm putting this comment up on the screen. Is that what they do?
Who's got a... Oh, wait. I don't know if I can say that on the... Tommy's probably knew what I was about to say there, but Tommy, I'm actually going to the game on Saturday, so...
Oh, and listen, about that, I'm going to watch the Tops tomorrow night. Western Kentucky.
Is it homecoming weekend or no?
No, it's the 100 Miles of Hate tomorrow night.
They play Middle Tennessee.
Middle Tennessee State. I mean, and listen,
we're playing Old Dominion.
Oh, wow. Everybody's excited for that. But listen, you can't tell me that if you're talking college rivalry names, 100 Miles of Hate, great college rivalry name.
Yeah, that's pretty good, honestly.
Because,
and honestly, if I'm WKU, the hate's got to be pretty hard too, given the whole Mac, Mac situation there. Yeah, come on, Middle Tennessee. What was Middle Tennessee thinking there?
I don't know. We're getting off topic. There's no question about that. This has been a lot of fun though today. Make sure to follow us on all of our channels. Again, my pick 20-16 Bengals. Mick, your pick is
13-10 Bengals.
We're hopefully going to be back here next Wednesday at 8:00 Eastern time to hopefully cheer on a Bengals-Titans win, and then we get to preview Bengals-Cardinals, what everybody's really excited about. Mick, any parting thoughts?
No. Thanks for watching, guys, and Hoo Day.
Absolutely. That'll wrap us up for another edition of the show. And until next time, as Mick said, Hoo Day.